What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from the Quartering, and a bit of a more, awareness level topic today, mixed in with a bit of a meme, a bit of a laugh, but a stark reminder of who the type of people are that Blizzard and many other companies, Activision, are pandering to. Disney, Hollywood, anything that is getting censored or recut. This is the people that they're pandering to. We're going to start with a pretty hilarious situation going on right now. New video game curfew restricts when and how often minors can play. It'll be game over at an earlier hour for youth in China. The country introduced a new curfew that bans those under 18 from playing online video games between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. The new measures will restrict video game usage to 90 minutes per day, and 90 minutes per day on weekdays for minors. Underage gamers will be permitted to play 3 hours on weekend days and holidays. Well, how very giving of the Chinese overlords that Blizzard and many other companies are bending over backwards for. China announced the new protocol in an effort to deal with an addiction to gaming. This notice has emphasized on the responsibility of the corporations and executed the government's duty to supervise the problem. That's right, it's their duty to make sure you're not playing too many games. A spokesman for the nation's general administration of the press publication, which introduced the new order, said in a statement to, I don't know how to say that, news agency, according to CNN. In addition to overseeing the hours of gameplay, China's new plan also limits how minors can spend money on gaming. Ho ho! I wonder how that's gonna change. People between 16 and 18 years old are only allowed to transfer $57 a month to their online accounts, while between the ages of 8 and 16 will only be able to move $29. This announcement comes a little over a year after Beijing came up with measurements that restrict how many new online games are introduced, according to CNN, in an effort to reduce nearsightedness. This is a pretty big deal when you look at it. You're looking at not only a restriction of the amount of time people are allowed to play video games, most people aren't going to, corporations are looking at that very, very worriedly. And is that a word? Worriedly, with a worried look on their face? I'm not sure. But then you look at, this is the big blow to corporations that are milking the Chinese economy, with 16 to 18-year-olds only allowed to transfer $57 per month, which, by the way, $57 a month doesn't seem like a small amount. I think that's probably more than I've ever spent in a month on an online game, but I'm not the target demographic for Activision, Blizzard, and all these other companies that are worried about changing, removing skeletons from their game and changing Rainbow Six, removing slot machines from their video games to appease the Winnie the Pooh people. Now, if you're between 8 and 16, you can only move $29. And this goes on top of existing restrictions for video games, which I'm going to go through right now. Now, this is just the latest set of new rules, but when you look at the wording, it's pretty hilarious. China officially introduced new regulations for publishing video games. Games clarifying how the world's largest video game market accepts new releases. China's State Administration of the Press publication unveiled its guidelines for releasing games in China during a press conference on April 10th. The Chinese government established the SAP in 2018 to oversee the approval of new media in the country, but as SAP established its processes for approvals, China halted the release of new video games in the country for nearly 8 months. These are the people that Activision, Blizzard, every major video game company, the NBA, these are the people that they're pandering to. This app eventually established an online games ethics committee to review new games and make sure they meet the government standard. The ethics committee prohibits anything that violates or threatens China's constitution, national security, political climate. Games that promote religion, obscene content featuring drugs, violence, or gambling. Extreme violence would include images of dead bodies and, as we know, skeletons or pools of blood. Though the country does accept some games with weapons occasionally. With the new oversight committee in place, China has approved about 1,000 games for release since December 2018, but those games come from a backlog of titles that were originally, imagine standing in line. They, of course, expressed concerns about video games leading to addiction and overall lack of productivity. Video game versions of poker and mahjong are wildly popular in China and make up 1/3 of the country's new video games since 2017. The country's regulators are specifically looking to crack down on the number of gambling-related games moving forward, something I wish our government would do. Chinese regulators have also been working to introduce mandatory time limits for gamers under the age of 18, which, by the way, we now know was rolled out today. China's largest video game company and the world's biggest publisher began implementing mandatory age restrictions on its own last year, while the Chinese government was still blocking new releases. To manage age restrictions, Tencent introduced a new program called the Real Name Identity System. This is getting into some creepy levels. Players under the age of 18 were limited to playing just 2 hours a day, while those under the age of 12 are limited to 1 hour a day. Each player's name and age is checked against the National Citizen Database maintained by the China's Ministry of Public Security. Tencent also introduced facial recognition software in September 2018, starting with thousands of randomly selected gamers living in Beijing and Shenzhen. Imagine that. You have to stick your face in front of a camera to unlock a predetermined number of hours you can play and a predetermined number of dollars you can spend, and this is what is driving decisions at Blizzard and other companies like them. I only say Blizzard. There's plenty of blame to go around, I assure you. You know, Blizzard is obviously the most recent and public example of appeasement, bootlicking, but everybody's doing it, and it's disgusting. Despite the country's strict regulations on video games, China's gamers still generated $35 billion in revenue in 2018, according to Newzoo. With clear regulations in place, publishers will have a better idea of how to get their games into one of the most valuable markets for video games. I want companies to stop. I want them to work and stand against this kind of stuff. I mean, I get understanding that not every culture is the same and that some things might seem weird to me, like public canings or something like that. But it's been in place there forever, and it's not really my place to judge. But this kind of stuff is absurd. Do you think that people at Blizzard, all right, who are working on these games, have any interest in changing their game or working on a game that will ultimately appease somebody who's forcing 8-year-old kids who are, by the way, part of some sort of video, national database to stick their face in front of a camera to unlock more time to play video games? Imagine allowing the government into your house at that level. You'd have to have like brothers and sisters who don't like playing video games, hopefully, and you could borrow their face to extend your time to complete a mission. What happened? And they don't talk about any of this, but what is the punishment for going over your time gaming? How is this enforced? Nobody's reporting on that, but I'm genuinely interested. If anybody from China watches my videos, and I know that some people do, I want to know, what is the punishment? Does your console just turn off and unlock? Does it do all your games run through something like Steam, so Steam manages it and just boots you after 2 hours? Or does somebody kick down your door and take you to some sort of camp? Because if it's the law, then there must be some punishment behind it. And of course, this is the very same country, mind you, okay, that is has upwards of 1 million Muslims in camps, re-education camps. This is not a conspiracy. This is not some social justice warrior here in America talking about the border. This is real. This has been verified. And now, on top of that, the women who aren't in camps, who their husbands are in camps, are being forced by the Chinese government to sleep next to men, government officials. I'm sure nothing bad's happening there. Party workers regularly sleep beside members of the persecuted families during surveillance visits that last up to a week. The monitoring forms part of the systematic repression of these people in China's western Xinjiang region, where experts and human rights groups believe that more than 1 million, most of the men, have been arbitrarily detained in secretive re-education camps. I want somebody to ask Blizzard about that. That would have been the question I would have asked at Q&A. Did you know this is happening? And these are the people that you're choosing over everyone else. These are the people that you're choosing over gamers in the West. Think about that. On top of everything else I've talked about here with the new laws in place, those who are not incarcerated face an increasingly strict security regime, which includes armed checkpoints, ID cards, and streets lined with facial recognition cameras. Since last year, these families in Xinjiang have been required to invite government officials into their homes, provide them with information about their lives, political views, and comply with indoctrination. They have deployed more than 1 million spies, most of them male, and party to the country's Han ethnic minority, to stay in their households every 2 months, which is part of what's called the pair up and become family. During these visits, the officials who governments describe as relatives of the monitored families work, eat, and often share beds with their hosts. This is who video game companies are pandering to, and it's disgusting. Blizzard, Activision, EA. Isn't there enough money? How much money is enough? At this point, I'd be willing to pay a few dollars more for anybody who just takes a stand against this. This is video games in 2019.